This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Oh, even as we tape today's show, there is news. We couldn't wait to do the show today. I don't think for Conor Geekie's sake, obviously, but it is something that grabbed my attention. I'm sure it grabbed your attention, partner, and probably grabbed a lot of our audience because we were getting some tweets coming in and wanted to know why, what to make of all this. Dave Randorf, by the way, will be joining us in just a bit here on Power Lunch on Lightning Power Play at Bolts Radio. If you do want to get involved in the conversation, obviously for tomorrow, we'll get to those. But let me bring in my partner, Dave Mishkin. And it's funny. So we spent some time on the show yesterday, and I maybe floated the idea of a shakeup. Part of me wanted to pull that back because I usually don't like to go that route 6 games in. People will ask, I see a lot of problems with this Lightning team, and typically our response as a team here is, look, I think they're going to be okay. They're going to turn some things around, and they'll figure this out. I still think that will be true, but I felt like what was different this year potentially when the team maybe came out of the gate struggling compared to previous years over the last 2 to 3, let's say, is that maybe you had collectively some options that you could go to quicker if there were some slumps or struggles with the big club. We can debate who those players would be or should be called up from Syracuse, but nonetheless, it was announced yesterday that Conor Geekie is going down to Syracuse. And while I don't know if he was a guy specifically I would have brought up, because the argument that I have made to a degree with Geekie is that I think he needs to probably be in a more of a top 6 role for an extended period of time for me to really gauge what he can bring to this team because of the pedigree and I think of the skill set. I don't think playing him on a 3rd or 4th line helps his development all that much. That being said, he wasn't a player I had in mind that was going to be the first to potentially fall to Syracuse. I had a couple of other players in mind that I was going to say, I need to see a little bit more here, and I think there were some options. That being said, it did happen, and you and me, partner, for the next hour are going to talk about what does this mean to the Lightning? What does it mean for Conor Geekie? Who did they call up? Why did they call this player up? And if things continue this path, are we going to see potentially maybe more movement from Syracuse to the big club? Understanding there's some injuries, there's some sicknesses that, hopefully Kucherov's ready to go. But I threw a lot out there to start, but I thought it was important to bring that up because we did kind of hint at that yesterday.
You did.
And and the player wasn't the one I thought, but it did happen. So does that give us a little bit more insight into maybe what the organization is thinking with how this start has been going on through 6 games?
Well, if you and I were on a game show and the game show was channel the spirit of Julien Brisebois, you would have won. I've said many times on the show, I'm not the general manager. I try and kind of put the pieces together in my own mind and try and get into Julian's head, but Julien is his own person. And I kind of, when you said maybe make some changes, I couched it as this was a little bit of a tough stretch with the back-to-backs. They had the illnesses, and while they didn't play as well as they wanted to, certainly as we've looked at the first 6 games, they haven't played as well as they wanted to, and in certain games they haven't played as well as they wanted to in those games, and they haven't played as well as they're probably going to need to play. Let's state that up front.
Yeah.
I thought that, okay, now they're kind of coming home and kind of reset the dial here, and have another crack at it where you're not on the road, you're not playing the second half of a back-to-back with travel against a rested opponent. Let's see how they do. And you had said, maybe let's see what some guys in Syracuse have got, because a lot of them showed really well in the preseason. Well, we do know that Julian is not one to sit around and wait if he sees that an action is needed to be taken. So that is consistent with his mindset. That is consistent with what we've seen from him. He is a very bold general manager when it comes to making moves, and he's not shy about making difficult moves. So you were right. Like, they made the change yesterday, and we can get into maybe why the change was made. But the second thing that I want to point out is another reason why I would lose that game show contest is that I have said Declan Carlisle is probably the next guy up. I said he's the eighth defenseman. If they need a lefty, it would be him. Yeah. Lo and behold, they called up a lefty. It was not Declan Carlisle. It was Charle-Édouard D'Astous. Yes, that is how you say his name. You usually say Gesundheit when I say that, Greg. Hopefully we will get to know this player quite well, because I will say we saw him in very limited action. He was in that 322 penalty minute game and played a lot in that game. But that game was – there's not much you can take out of that game in terms of kind of assessing how guys are playing. But he got into one other game. It was the Lightning's home game against Nashville. And – I was impressed. That was the first time I'd seen him, because he's another one of these guys that's new to the organization. He'd been in Europe the last couple of years, so he's not like he's a young buck. I mean, he's got some pro years of experience under his belt, and he had a good start to the year in Syracuse. I think he's leading all defensemen with a goal and 2 assists.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I was wrong about them standing pat, and I was wrong about the guy that they were going to call up. So what do we make of this? Well, let's take the Geekie part first. You just said he was maybe not the guy you would expect, but I'm going to go back to something you repeated often during training camp in the preseason, and that is it's a lot easier to send down a guy who is waiver exempt. Conor Geekie is waiver exempt. Just about everybody else that they would or could send down would have to clear waivers.
Yep.
So sometimes the easiest solution is the most obvious solution. There may be more to it than that, and I understand. Geekie is a prospect.
Yeah.
I can tell already, and he's been with the organization a year and a little bit, like this is going to be a controversial player in that fans have lots of opinions about this guy. And I think that is in some ways normal, because the Lightning made a significant trade to get him. Right? They traded Sergachev to get Geekie and Moser. Geekie has not burst upon the scene, and to your point, playing top 6 minutes and scoring 20 to 25 goals right off the bat. We see that from some younger players that are new to the NHL. That has not been Geekie's path. Geekie is going to have a different path. Do I still think he is a blue chip prospect? Yes. Do I still think that at some point he's going to end up playing significant minutes for the Lightning? Yes. But, I mean, part of this is clearly they feel he can get more seasoning in the minors. Unless, and I did see a post from someone, like Syracuse does play Wednesday, it's possible they could call him back up. I think it is fairly certain, at least in my mind, that they will make another recall, because right now, with the injuries they have at forward, notably Paul and Gergensons, the Lightning do not have any extra forwards. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they basically have 11 forwards right now. So I don't think that they're going into this 3 and 4 set over the weekend with 11 forwards. So somebody's coming up. Maybe it's Geekie again. Maybe they're sending him down. Syracuse plays tomorrow. Maybe they're going to give him a game down there and call him back up. Maybe it's going to be somebody else, which is something that I think you had mentioned. Some of these forwards that showed very well in the preseason, maybe it's one of them. D'Astous is interesting. So they called up a lefty. We don't know. They're practicing today after we are off the air. We don't know if Crozier is going to be well enough to play. But calling up a lefty does signal to me that I think D'Astous is in. I think they called up D'Astous because this is unlike the Santini situation where they felt they needed insurance. It was a back-to-back on the road. They're calling him up a couple of days in advance. They're giving him – it's not like he is going to play Wednesday and fly in Thursday as the seventh defenseman, right, which they could do. They're bringing him in early. They're giving him some practice days. I think he's in, Greg. And if he's in, we've had some fans talk about this, I think he comes in for Littleberg. We'll see how they kind of run the D pair. But he's played well. Like I am not shocked. Based on what I saw from this guy in the one preseason game and what we heard he has done in Syracuse, and he's not a spring chicken to pro hockey. Like, he's played pro hockey. He hasn't played in the NHL. But, look, that is shuffling things up and maybe causing a ripple as the GM best you can. You can't go out and make, like, blockbuster trades. I'm not saying he would do that, but, it's just harder to do that, particularly early in the season with the salary cap, everything else. This is something you can do, though. You can call up this guy. He's already cleared waivers, so you can move him up and down pretty freely for the next month. And they want to take a different look at things. But unless Geekie's coming back up, the Lightning don't have any extra healthy forwards, right? So, I mean, they're gonna have to call up another forward before Thursday's game. And we'll see who that forward is.
Yep.
That's my take on what we've seen in the last 24 hours.
I also get the sense, you mentioned, however you phrased it, that this, I'm paraphrasing for you, I do think Geekie is a little of a polarizing player because I think the pedigree
from the fan base is
from
what
the
I'm saying. Yeah, because we've gotten comments all across the spectrum about kind of where he is and his development.
For sure. It's more of the pedigree, the trade, the expectations. I don't want to say similar to Jonathan Drouin, but maybe. Drouin was a very polarizing figure for fans. Everybody, you had a very strong opinion on him one way or the other. And really the best year he had with the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think it was the year they didn't make the playoffs, but he had a tremendous year because he was forced into it with some injuries. And he really showcased, particularly on the power play, that he was somebody who had that pedigree of being a high draft pick. I think Geekie is, look, we've talked a lot about this. The Lightning haven't had a ton of high-end prospects over the last handful of years. They acquired Geekie, but Geekie immediately became probably that guy. And I think because of that, do you overvalue, I'm talking more in the fans, from the fans' perspective, because of that, do you overvalue somebody's abilities and maybe where they project because you don't have a lot of those players in your system? So the ones that you do, you really latch on to them? Maybe. I think what's intriguing with Geekie, we've always said this, his size and his skill set. Worked on his skating this year, wanted to take a bigger role. Whether he plays center or wing, that's always a debate. So I think there are some things out of his control that probably didn't put him maybe in the best position to be productive. Players, position, some of those things are out of his control. What we do know is that based off of his body of work so far, it has been inconsistent. There have been a couple of stints now going back to the minor leagues. He's still a young player, but clearly it is not as big of a slam dunk for the coaching staff and the organization that he should be in the top six as it potentially could be for some of the fans out there who just want to see the guy play and roll out the puck and let him go. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and this is a different situation. By the way, before I say that, I want to correct myself because I totally forgot the Lightning scratched Kucherov because he was ill. So assuming Kucherov is healthy, the Lightning have 12 forwards. Still, they have the roster spot open. They could call up another forward. And I would be surprised if they don't, but we'll see. So I was like, yeah, they didn't scratch any. They don't have any injured forwards that were scratched. They didn't healthy scratch anyone over the weekend. Well, that's because Kucherov was sick. So they have 12 forwards.
Yep.
Having said that, we've talked about some players. Barry Boulet is a good example. I think we said this about Crozier too. It's like, would they really even benefit from going back to the minors at this point? It's kind of like they've showed everything they need to show at the minor league level. So it's either onward and upward or maybe time to find another organization. That was the case of Barry Belay. I think Crozier is onward and upward, as we've seen already this year. I think Geekie can benefit from time in the minors just because he hasn't really been in a situation for a full year, certainly not, to play the 18 to 22 minutes a night being the guy, being in all situations, right? So that may be part of it too. There may be a benefit for him to go to Syracuse and play in the role that you're kind of saying you envision that this would benefit him at the NHL level. Well, maybe there isn't room for him at the NHL level to do that, or just coach's decision. They're not putting him there. But in Syracuse, you would figure he would get that opportunity. I think that would benefit him.
And I think we
benefit
both
him.
Would we agree, and probably Phil would agree, although we can ask him on Thursday if it comes up, that he's probably going to be most successful if he's your centerman?
Well,
in some capacity,
him,
right?
I liked him when he was at center in that I thought he was
Yeah.
skating freely. I've said that on the show. We'll
Yeah.
see. That's a decision for Joel Bouchard about how he wants to construct the lineup.
Should we bring in
keep
Dave
in
Randorf?
mind, we've already seen a couple of centers go down, right? Like
Yeah.
Dominic James is a center. Stahoviak's a center. So if they're playing center in Syracuse, yeah, you could just have a lot of depth down the middle, but maybe they put Geekie on the wing with one of those other guys as centers.
That's going to be it's what you do at the NHL level. Are you playing out of position to a degree? Does it matter? Dave Randorf is with us. Of course.
Yeah, for our audio listeners, Dave is sporting his Blue Jays hat. I don't think that thing may have come off his head last night. Did you sleep in that hat, Dave?
I didn't. I take good care of my hat, and why wouldn't I be wearing this hat today?
I know.
Down 2-0 at home in the ALCS, come all the way back and win it in dramatic fashion last night with a big 3-run homer by George Springer. It was. Listen, I know it's a hockey show. I'll just say one thing. As we all know, baseball has a special connection, unlike other sports. It's such a long, long season, and it is been a big part of my family, with my sons, with my dad, who I lost earlier this year, with my grandfather before that. So it was a big night last night in this house. It was a lot of emotions felt. So I'm very excited to look forward to the World Series.
And even just watching it on TV, I mean, you could feel the noise, if that's the right way of putting it. And I'm just bringing this up because you had a chance to go to Toronto, break in the Lightning schedule, and see what was Game 2 of the Yankee series, right? And Guerrero hit the Grand Slam home run, and you were saying like that was incredible to be in the stadium for that.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I did tell you about that. That was a day that Vladimir Guerrero, who ended up being the ALCS MVP, he had a grand slam in that game, and the roof was open that day. And I could not imagine how much louder it would have been had the roof been closed, which it was last night in the 7th inning when Springer hit his home run on and the way the night built, there was nothing going on. The Jays did not have a lot of things going on offensively with their bats until that point when they got a leadoff walk and they got a hit 2-1. Then Springer comes up. He's been 0 for the night, and you could feel everybody. I moved up the edge of my couch. So it must have been electric. It's a great baseball city, Toronto, and of course it's unique in that the fan base stretches from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, British Columbia. It's a whole country that's behind that team, so it's pretty cool.
I was going to ask you before we get into the Lightning, Dave, is that obviously it's probably not the craze for a Maple Leaf win or obviously a Stanley Cup if that happens, but are the Blue Jays pretty well received collectively? In terms of everything?
No. This isn't a distant second. It's second. It's always the league's first, but it is by no means a distant second. It is, the Blue Jays have been around since the late 70s. So and they've won two World Series. It is definitely a big deal in Toronto for sure. It's a daily thing as it is, in this area with the Rays. It's a daily drama that goes up and down, but. Make no mistake about it. Leafs do come in at number one, but the Jays are right behind them.
Yeah, no, it's great.
So, Dave, we spent the first 15 minutes in part talking about the roster moves yesterday.
Yeah.
Conor Geekie going down and D'Astous coming up. What did you make of the news when you saw it?
Well, a couple things. I guess I was a little surprised that Conor Geekie was sent down, but at the same time, I guess this is anticipation of Gergensen's being ready to come back up.
Good point. I didn't mention that. Yeah.
And get back into the lineup, not come back up, but get back in. And in my mind, and I've had this conversation off the air with my broadcast partner, Brian Englow, Geekie is not a fourth line player. He believes it belongs in the top, if not the second line, the third line for sure. Now that third line combination they're going to stick with that, I think, for the foreseeable future to try to build some chemistry. So I think in this case, it's a matter of, you're not going to like this, Connor, but we want you to go back down. We want you to play in a role we see you better suited to, which is a much more offensive, much more meaningful role. Not to say the fourth line isn't, but let's be honest here. It's a different type role than he would have. He got a small opportunity on that second line in the preseason, and I don't really know that he did much to play his way off of it. I just think that it's a numbers thing right now. They love Gage Gonzalez in that position right at the moment. So go down, get some minutes in different situations that you're not going to get here. Grow your game like you did last year. I think we would all agree, the three of us on this chat here, that he hit a wall last year, needed to go down. And when he came back, he was arguably one of their better players in that first round series against the Florida Panthers. So this is a patience thing with Geekie, who is a high first round pick and has got that pedigree. So he goes down. I think the other thing too is that D'Astous coming up it's like, this is a bit of a shot across the bow to not only the guys in defense, but everybody. We're not waiting around. It's not early. 1 win in 6 games is far beneath our standards here. And we're not going to sit around and let things just continue to work themselves out. We need to, as Ryan McDonough said the other night, we showed a lot of urgency the other night in Columbus, trying to, rally and come back just as we did the other night. We've got to start showing that for 60 minutes. We've got to start showing that when we've had the lead, of which they've had many in this struggling start. It's really interesting. If you think back to that opening night against Ottawa, they jumped out to that 3-0 lead, and it looked like it should. I think we all agree. You probably talked about it, Greg, in your post-game show. It looked like everybody expected it to look like. This was a team that had preseason predictions across the league going, they're going to be amongst the top teams. And then they lost that lead, and everything has been a struggle since. Everything has been a struggle since. Even their win in Boston was a struggle. So, they are going to try to find their best chances to win in each and every position that they put out on the ice. Will D'Astous get a look? I think he would. I think he's definitely going to get a look here. They wouldn't bring him up for nothing. And in my mind, I didn't know anything about this guy until I saw him in the rookie and then preseason, rookie camp and preseason. And he's got a little bit of edge to go along with the offensive numbers that he clearly has had over the course of his junior and pro career. He had a little bit of presence with the puck and a little bit of edge to him as well. He was bigger than I think I envisioned him being, and he played a little bit bigger too. Is he going to turn around things single-handedly? No, but this could be a real kind of found money situation. We shall see.
Dave, do you feel like now, because the Lightning have some options down in Syracuse, legitimate options of guys who could come up, that we may see more of these moves if things continue to muddy along?
No question, Greg. I mean, not for the sake of, just always rocking the boat, but just for the sake of improving things. And, are any of the big guys going to get set? Unlikely. No, I think we all feel Brandon Hagel is going to break free offensively here. He's still doing a lot of good things. We all think Kucherov and Point are going to get back to the level that we're more accustomed to seeing offensively. I think once you get Nick Paul back into the lineup, that's going to open up a whole new situation for the line, the way things line up for the Lightning. But think about it. They haven't really had a whole lot going on in the American League for a couple of seasons now, but Joel Bouchard has taken over the reins down there and has really started to develop guys who weren't first-round picks, who maybe weren't even drafted, guys who are becoming options now, and that is such a huge thing. And I don't think I think that's part of the plan, and I think they plan to utilize that strength in certain situations. And I think D'Astous is a perfect example of that.
6 games in, as you mentioned, just the one win. They do have 4 points because they've cobbled together some games they've gotten to overtime. But kind of big picture, what do you see as lacking or missing or the team needing to start winning games more regularly?
To me, it's execution, and it's just flow to their game, particularly offensively, Dave. We're seeing a lot of one and dones, like Columbus. Really shut them down, snuff them out at key moments. I think the power play continues to be a work in progress. Obviously, not having Kucherov for the last 2 games changes everything. So let's just kind of take that and put it to the side. But even with him in the lineup, it hasn't really popped yet as we expected it to. So I still think they're still, while they've had some effective moments and some effective looks with man advantage, that aspect of their game hasn't really taken hold. I don't know if it'll be a top 3, 4, 5 power play this year or not. We'll wait and see. They certainly were last year, but now they're working in a newer piece with Bjorkstrand, who they didn't really have at all last season. They had him for a small stretch, and that was it. So, but he is going to be a part of the equation as well. But to me, it's basically just execution and urgency to go with it. I don't want to say they've been outworked. I don't really have an issue with the battle level and the work level. It's just the efficiency level has been down for me, and that has been surprising. That they have had to work so hard to get not only goals but to get some sustained offensive pressure at key moments. Yes, they had the big third period in Detroit. Yes, they had a big push in Columbus, but that's the other team's kind of playing a little bit off the puck as well, just to try to keep them at bay, and they're not being as aggressive. So there's other things that go into that. And to me, I want to see more of that, as McDonough pointed out, in the first and second period, rather than just trying to make up lost ground, in the last 15 minutes of a game.
One thing that has stood out, and Mish talked about this yesterday, and I think it's pretty apparent from preseason to now that, some positives would be J.J. Moser, right? He's looked physical, feisty, and he's healthy, which is great, but it does feel like his game looks different than what we saw at times last year.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I certainly know Dave's thoughts on this. He's made that clear on the post-game bus ride back, and I don't disagree. This is a guy who is, I think, missed being out there, and he was given a role unlike any type role he's had in his NHL career. You're going to play with Victor Hedman. Yeah. We're going to ask you to switch sides, and hey, no problem. I can do whatever you want. And then that was taken from him in a kind of a freaky little freak accident, non-contact injury that kept him out for 30 games or something like that last year. And I think, he took it serious at the time, and I think he certainly took it serious in his training and came back and wanted to just reinsert him back into an elevated role. And I love the fact that he plays at that level to stay where he is. That's a prime spot in the NHL to be partnered up with Victor Hedman. And I think, as we've seen, certainly over the few years that I've been here and going back beyond that, it takes a special. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody can play with Hedman and be successful and make that pairing comfortable. We saw it with Stralman. We saw it with Schuster, of all people, right? Yeah. We saw it with guys who are under the radar guys. Then they mix Radish in. Mixed results. Crozier got a look at there. They didn't stick with that very long. It's a special type of player that is able to seamlessly allow Victor to be Victor, but at the same time not leave things too exposed, while also bringing elements of your game to the table as well. And I think Moser has done that. I think, we're going to look back on that trade, and I still have a lot of faith in Conor Geekie developing into an important player going forward. He's still very young, but don't discount the addition. That was a shrewd addition to that deal to bring in Moser as well.
Last one for me, Dave, just to take us under the hood here for what it's been like with the new television provider, the Spot 66. You guys got 5 preseason games to hopefully smooth out any bumps, and now you're off and running in the regular season. Has there been any significant difference for you in your role? And if so, how has it gone for you, and how has it gone for the broadcast team?
Yeah, for me, really, it's and as Dave, you walk in, you slap on the headset, and you call the game. We've got the same producer, which is for those listeners, obviously that's a key. He's the guy who's in charge of everything and how it is presented. Beyond the play dictating where it goes, he's the guy who decides when we're going to show this clip, or we're going to show that graphic, when we're going to go to Gabby, and what Brian's going to talk about in between plays. So same producers in place. We have a new director this year. We had a longtime director named Doug Yalaki, excellent at what he does, and he retired, so we brought in a new one, and that takes a little time for the new Doug.
He's also a Doug.
Also a Doug, a great guy, very experienced as well. But it's like a new player coming in. We're a team, just like the players are, and we are connected throughout the show too. So it takes him a little time to get up and running. It's been good. I think the biggest difference for me, obviously, is in this changing age of broadcast media and certainly regional sports broadcasts. It's shifting, and everything was on a higher tier sports channel and app based, and that wasn't working. We were on our previous arrangement with FanDuel, and before that Bally. Things started to shift rapidly in terms of people cutting the cord, not paying the extra money that you needed to get that tier to include the package that included our games. This goes for the Rays as well. And then the app came out, and the app wasn't really reliable, and it was a lot of money, and people already have subscription fatigue, and on and on and on. It's still, FanDuel is still up and running, and I wish everybody over there on that side of the fence the best. But now it's free. It's over the air. It's a broader audience base and viewing region, basically the top half of the state, all the way to Jacksonville, Gainesville, and Orlando, and all points in between, and Tallahassee, you name it. So that's good, and it's free. So I think that's the best thing, and we can get more viewers and more people to enjoy the Lightning games. So that's great. And the other thing, too, is that I'd like to remind everybody about, when you're not listening to Dave on the radio, it is on the app as well. It's on this app that you're watching this show on right now. The first NHL team to do that, to stream their games. That one is not free, but it's less than $1 a game, which I can objectively say I think is pretty reasonable. That's from like the beginning of the season all the way through to our first round of the playoffs, plus pre-games, plus all the other content that you get, including the show. So that's been the big difference for me, is I'm already getting feedback like, okay, this is great. I don't have to, I found it. I get it. It's on this channel, depending on which carrier I have. And that's been the biggest takeaway for me, is that people are appreciative that in this day and age, when we've all got all these subscriptions all over the place, Greg's got kids. He's probably got Disney Plus and everything else going on there, right?
You know it.
It reaches a breaking point. So this is good that we can get our product. You got to be seen. You've got to be seen, and I think the Lightning recognize that, and that's why we went this way.
Go Blue Jays. We'll be thinking about you
Friday night, and I'm so lucky that we have a very busy schedule once the season starts, and everything's lined up where I'm really able to watch a lot.
You can watch the whole thing.
There's one game where we'll be in Nashville and the game will be on, but other than that, I'm free and clear to watch all
those
the
5 o'clock games this
Yes, that was
weekend.
A huge one on Saturday. It's going to help me out. I'll be ready. You will see me, Dave, after that game gets in. My chair will be spinning. I'll be gone. There'll be a puff of smoke. I'll be leaving very quickly.
I will just mention, Dave, I think, so you said all of Canada will be cheering for Toronto. There is, I think, a healthy anti-Dodger vibe, at least in parts of the U.S., so there may be a good pocket of this country, too, rooting for Toronto.
Maybe. Well, we can, there's room. There's room on the wagon. Jump aboard, Greg. Come on, let's go.
Let's do it. All day long.
Yes.
Well, Dave, we appreciate it, buddy. Thank you, sir, for
Thanks,
coming
Dave.
on.
Always a pleasure coming on with you guys. Dave, I'll see you at practice shortly, and Greg will see you on Thursday.
You got it, buddy. Appreciate you coming on. All right, there he goes. Dave Randorf, who, hey, look, anytime you can follow your team, Mish.
Absolutely.
We've talked about this before, and, it's been a while since the Pirates have been any good, but,
around the same time that the Blue Jays won their World Series in back-to-back years. That was when the Pirates were last relevant. I guess we can use that word. So good for them. I remember we had Elliot Friedman on our show after the Lightning had won I can't remember if it was the 2020 Cup or the 2021 Cup. And he said, I wish every fan base, basically in every sport, gets to experience a championship because there's nothing like it. And part of me was a little disappointed for Seattle just because Seattle's never been to a World Series. But again, I'm not like Dave. I had no dog in the hunt here. I was really happy to see either team get in. I think I'd mentioned that the Blue Jays haven't been to a World Series since 1993. But one team had to win, one team had to lose. So that's the way it goes.
There's nothing better than rooting for your team. I love it. And, especially he's right about baseball. It does take on a kind of a different, it's so long too.
Yeah. I
think you get to a certain point and you're so invested in things. It is interesting, baseball, how it's received in Canada, because we're just, we talk so much about hockey, and to get that taste, the Blue Jays have had success, of course, over the course of their
That's
their
the sport in the summer. I mean, the CFL, Canadian Football League, starts earlier than the NFL, so that is kind of sort of in the summer. But once the Maple Leafs and the Raptors are done, because there are no other Canadian teams in the NBA, there are in the NHL, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, once you get into the summer in Canada, I mean, yeah, they have soccer. And that's big. Like, I did some soccer. I know soccer is very big in Montreal because there's a very healthy Italian population base there, and we know Italians love soccer. Italy has won the World Cup before. But yeah, it's kind of like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna watch sports, the regular sports. I mean, yeah, maybe golf and tennis and stuff like that. But I think the Blue Jays have a pretty healthy following. They're kind of the only game in town in some ways during the dog days of the summer. So,
no doubt.
Good for them. I didn't realize, and this just goes to show how far out of the loop I am with baseball, I didn't realize they finished last in their division last year, too. Worst to first.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
That's hard to do in baseball, as we just talked about with the Pirates, right? Like, if you're down at the bottom, 100%. It's hard to just snap your fingers and elevate.
I would agree on that. Do we want to get to some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's dig them. I have them on my phone here. I'll read. Scott says, I got home and see Geekie was sent down. My reaction? What? So knowing the Lightning don't have a game until Thursday, I just looked at the Crunch's schedule. They have a game on Wednesday. My Galaxy brain, and then he has parentheses, what JBB is doing. Conclusion, I'm hoping that this is just to give Geekie an extra game of experience on top line and the first power play unit to build confidence. And he's coming right back to the Bolts for Thursday's game. Guys, would love to hear your thoughts about this on the show.
Yeah, so I had seen that comment elsewhere from somebody else that Syracuse was playing. I don't know. I hadn't really thought that Girgensons was that close to coming back, but he did skate on the trip. Dave Randorf mentioned that. It's possible Girgensons will essentially take Geekie's spot on the roster.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, my mea culpa, I forgot that the Lightning do have 12 forwards. So even if Girgensons doesn't come off IR, they could just dress the 12 that they have. I don't know. I mean, yes, it's possible they sent him down for one game. This feels like it's a little bit longer, though, to me. I don't know if you share that sentiment, Greg.
No, I think this has been ongoing. This is probably a lot of information from last year, preseason, and then where we got to here. So to your point, I think this is more about also where does he fit? Let's be pretty clear. To your point, and why I think this is maybe more of a mid to long-term play for Geekie, and that can be 15 games, that could be 20, whatever you want to put there. He needs to play. He needs to play in a more offensive-minded role. He's not going to get that here.
Mm-hmm.
The question that's going to come up, if he goes down to Syracuse and does very well, what do you do when you bring him back up? Where are you going to put him? Because now we're kind of ramming our head against the wall. Now it becomes, okay, Your confidence is high again. You're putting up numbers. We wanted to see you dominate. That is tremendous. Do you put him back on a fourth line? Or do you sit there and say, we've got to make room for him in the top 6, and if that means somebody else has to come down, that's what we do. Look, I'm not at the center position. What are you going to do with the first 2 lines? Who are you going to sit? Not sit, but who are you going to move around? I mean, you're talking about a perennial all-star in Braden Point, and if you want to go that route with Anthony Cirelli as your second-line center, he's well entrenched as that guy. Now, maybe you could have some flexibility, and if you want to start growing your top 3 lines, and maybe this is that conversation where Geekie's part of something, but he's playing center. I don't think you can put him on a fourth line again. I mean, you can, but you want to get the most out of Conor Geekie. And so if Conor Geekie does what you want him to do down in Syracuse, which is a good problem to have, by the way, and then he comes up here and he's playing 8 minutes a night on a wing, are you giving him the best chance to be successful?
Yeah.
And I don't know if they are. So first things first, partner. He's got to go down to Syracuse, be motivated, and put up some numbers. I mean, he's got to do the things the Lightning want him to do.
Build up his game.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. A good portion of that is going to be scoring points. But, you want to be responsible defensively, winning some faceoffs. How's your conditioning? How's your skating? I mean, those are things that they're evaluating. But let's get beyond that point and say, okay, after how many games down there, he has performed very well, and it's time for the Lightning to make another decision and bring him up. Where does he go? Because that is going to be the ultimate question, which I'm not sure they have figured out, mainly because I don't know if Geekie has given them a reason, in fairness to them, to say you are a top 6 forward on our team right now the way it's currently constructed. You and I have kind of talked about, could he do a third line? I think there's room there to have those conversations. Certainly not a fourth line.
I think the start of the year, the plan was to slot him in on the third line.
Yeah.
And then other things happened. And they put Holmberg on that third line, and they really liked that line. That was what Dave Randorf was talking about. So
you have some.
It's kind of like you're not going to disrupt a line that is going. Arguably, your best line in terms of consistently driving play. You're not going to pull that line apart just because you're saying, all right, we need to get this guy into
and that's fair,
a top 9.
And that's going to be part of the process, which could mean that if he is promoted again, and if he ends up being a fourth line center, is that something that ends up being the best for both worlds? He's at the NHL, which means Geekie is he's in a much better spot mentally, wanting to be up here than in Syracuse. He's maybe at his natural position. The only downside for him, if you want to call it a downside, is his minutes are probably limited, and you're not probably driving a ton of play offensively. So that would be the part they have to work through. But eventually, in a perfect world, which we don't live in, Geekie comes up, he's forces his way into a top 6, becomes a dominant power forward, and you adjust accordingly. Then you've got to make some other decisions.
Right.
By the way, that's a positive thing. Anthony says, Chafee can't find his game right now. I think Vasi needs to play less than 50 games this season. I heard from goalie expert that his stance is too upright, maybe less pressure for his spine. Maybe you can invite Steve. Is it Valiquette to the show?
Yeah. Well, Steve Valiquette knows the position. He played the position. He does Rangers broadcasts. I know that. I can't speak to that. I always urge some caution when at least I hear from fans who are repeating what they've heard from broadcasters. Now, look, Valiquette is a well-regarded, well-respected analyst who played the position. It's not like he's, a beer league goalie who's like giving his opinion online and somebody is repeating it. All I will say is that the guy who knows Vasilevsky the best is Franjean, who has been his goalie coach for a decade. Okay? So there is no stone left unturned about usage, about stance, about every goal against is videoed and reviewed by the coaching staff, by Franz, who's part of the coaching staff. He needs to meet with Vasilevsky. It's not like they're putting their feet up on the ottoman and not reviewing the information that they need to review or going over everything that you can imagine to help not just him, but Johansson get ready to perform at their best. So look, Vasi likes to play. Vasi has played well, with the one exception of the year where he missed 20 games and needed to get his game back in gear. But, last year was his best goals against average in his career. And he played his usual amount. I think he has played well this year. His numbers don't really reflect that, but he has been more under siege and had to deal with more scoring chances against than probably he would like or the team would like. We'll see.
Yeah.
The one thing I will mention kind of pro Anthony's comment is if Johansson continues to play the way that he has played, maybe the Lightning are like, we understand Vasi wants to play 3 out of every 4, but we do want to play him less, and we have faith that Johansson can get more to a 50-30 split rather than 60-20. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out at the end. Lightning, I think, have 1 or 2 additional back-to-backs this year. I haven't counted them. I know that they had 2 already, and they have another one at home this weekend. Assuming both goalies stay healthy, both goalies, kind of play well. So, there's no issue of like having a guy not play because he needs to get his game together. We'll see where they are at the end of the year. I don't see any sign, though, that Vasi is going to play less than his 3 out of every 4 at this point.
Goaltending has been solid this year, and that's been a bright spot. He mentioned Chaffee.
Yes,
I get it.
Anthony.
I get it.
Chaffee to me is one of these guys, like too many of the Lightning forwards have not been able to help the Lightning impose their will on the other team frequently enough. Now, Chaffee on the line with Finley and Douglas had a good third period in Detroit. They spent a lot of time in the offensive zone. They had that one sequence around the net. Chaffee, probably 9 times out of 10, scores the tying goal there.
Right.
That was an amazing save by John Gibson with, his arm. But too much of the time, and this isn't just Chaffee, I think we touched on this on the show yesterday, too much of the time, the Lightning's 5-on-5 play, they have not, and these are the words that Dave used, executed or played with high enough urgency. And so they have not been able to dictate the terms of what has been going on. So when Anthony singles out a guy, look, I don't disagree. I think Chaffee would probably like to be more involved in helping the Lightning grab control of the rudder, right? Too often they have not really been in control of the rudder. Either the other team has, or it's been kind of a push and not much is happening for either team.
I think he's one of those guys that he's kind of penciled in the starting lineup, but you don't have – it's not in pen, if you know what I mean. I think he's somebody that you need to see a little bit more from him. And, I know Chief has talked about this. He mentioned this at the beginning of the year, but, Gonzalez, I think, is kind of in the same boat. Maybe he's a little bit more of a leash.
He's been given more opportunity,
yes,
more ice time, bigger role.
I think that's what – like a lot of people would say, okay, Gonzalez, he's in a top 6. Is he doing much? And I know we have people who really like his game, but it is about production. And some people who are in the geeky camp would be like, well, why can't he get a shot, in a top 6 role like that? And so that's where you're going to have some of that back and forth. And I'm not saying I disagree with that thinking. Healthy competition's good, but it's only good if you allow it. So I think at some point with Chaffee and Gonzalez, I think those two guys specifically. And look, if you want to throw Lilleberg in there too, as a defenseman that you've seen some up and down performance, and you want to be a little bit more consistent, and maybe there's going to be more competition. Those are maybe 3 players you could look at. I know. Look, Douglas is who he is. I think he was brought in for a purpose and for a reason. I don't think that's blocking any of these guys from getting to the NHL necessarily, because he's filling a very specific role. His main thing will be in the 6 or 7 minutes that you do play, making sure the other team doesn't score and answer for anything out there that happens to your teammates. And I think that's
I
kind of
don't
where I am.
believe they've been out there, they being so Finley and Douglas were swapping spots, and then when Kucherov got sick, they were in the lineup together and line mates. I don't believe that they have been out for any goal against at this point. I mean, their minutes have been like they've been sheltered a little bit.
Yeah.
Douglas more than Finley, because Finley has taken some defensive zone faceoffs. I'd have to go back and look, but there isn't a play that comes to mind. They certainly weren't out on the ice for any of the goals against over the weekend in the Detroit or Columbus games, and they were line mates. I'm including Finley in here, but that line with Finley, Douglas, and Chafee, they weren't out on the ice for any goals against, which is, to your point, kind of the first box to check.
I don't know if I got to this yesterday or not. At NHL MS Paint says, Dave, as someone who has a lot of hockey IQ, have there been any obvious system differences from last year? Example, from 23 to 24 to 24 and 25. The defense system changed slightly and we did better. Has any system changed from 24-25 to today?
Yeah, I don't have that much hockey IQ. So when I call a game, I'm on the puck. I'm not always paying so close attention to what's happening away from the puck, and sometimes you need to look at that to see how players are moving and reacting. It's more that you just hear it. So the Lightning did adapt that Vegas style, I think, at the beginning of the 23-24 season, and they had some trouble with it. And so I think they dialed it back somewhat, and they kind of reached a system that worked well last year. I'm not sure if it was exactly the same as the one they had pre-2023-24. What I am seeing, and this is less about system, so my indication would be to you that they haven't really changed their quote-unquote system. They're just not making the plays they need to make to prevent scoring chances.
Yeah.
Whether it's tracking, and rush chances against have been probably more of a problem than in zone. And really, when you're talking about defensive system, you're talking about in zone. Yes, rush coverage is part of it, but sometimes rush coverage is less about your system and more about whatever decision you're making up the ice that maybe got you into trouble. Whereas in zone, it's kind of like you're setting up, right? And they've given up some goals in zone. They have, but I just think it's going back to what we've talked about and what Dave mentioned earlier in the show. Execution. Mm-hmm. Are you making the plays that are there to be made to get out of your defensive zone cleanly? Are you making the plays that need to be made to get through the neutral zone cleanly? Are you making the plays that need to be made to get into the offensive zone, either carrying it in or dumping it in, and maintain possession? We have not seen enough of that consistently through these first 6 games. You're going to look quiet offensively. You're going to look slow offensively. You're going to look out of sync, because you are out of sync when that happens.
Sure.
And the other team gets a vote. I mean, the other team is out there trying to prevent you from doing that. You just need to, this is why we talk about imposing your will. You need to be executing at a level where they're trying to stop you, but they're not really able to. I don't know if that answers your question, MS in the paint, but
I think
that's the best I've got for you at this point. Yeah.
Anthony also says the only good thing is that almost all Atlantic teams lost their last game. I think this team needs new players on the fourth line. It's not creating enough. The ozone time isn't there. Either is the possession. Kachuk will bring a lot more energy. Third line team right now isn't good enough. Or a 3-line team isn't good enough.
Yeah, that comment probably came in yesterday because Montreal played Buffalo last night, so one of those teams is going to win. Montreal won again, so good for the Canadians, off to a good start. I mean, look, we want the Lightning to do well, but I'm glad for Marty St. Louis that they had a push at the end of last year. They got into the playoffs. Yeah. I thought they gave the Capitals a pretty good series.
They did.
They were up. They were down 2-1. They were up in Game 4, if I'm remembering that right. They were that close to making the series a 2-2 series. They lost that game. I think they lost Game 5 in overtime. Anyway, they gave them a pretty good series, and it looks like they're building off of what they did last year. Anyway, we touched on this at the beginning of yesterday's show. The Lightning are idle until Thursday, so some teams are going to get points. Panthers and Bruins play tonight. There's a big story about Marchand coming back to Boston. One of those teams is getting 2 points, so that's going to happen.
Right.
Generally, though, yes, it's not like we've had a bunch of teams in the Atlantic get off to 6-1, 7-1, 8-1 starts. So the Lightning are within range. What was the other part he had about beyond the division?
I think he was.
He didn't like the fourth line. The fourth line hasn't seen a lot of action.
And Kachuk.
So
I think he mentioned Kachuk being a guy.
I liked Boris in the preseason. Yeah. He's like a lot of Syracuse players. He's gotten off to a good start. I think he's playing in a line with. Did I see this right? Duke and Stahoviak, and they had
It's a pretty good line.
They had a pretty good offensive weekend. Syracuse is 4-0.
Yeah,
3 road wins. And they've done it offensively. They've done it defensively.
Yeah,
Halverson has a shutout in there.
I mean, Dave,
Stahoviak has scored. James has scored. The D have scored.
They have, if they continue to progress well down at Syracuse, I mean, they have 4 or 5 legitimate options of guys they could call up who we saw in preseason and said they caught our attention.
And they played in the preseason with urgency. So if we are all in agreement that this is an area that has been lacking a little bit for the Lightning, if the guys that you are addressing are not bringing urgency, as McDonough said throughout the game, and yes, you can fail to play the full 60 because the full 60 means that you're just dictating play the whole 60. Right. That is not it. But you should be able. And I think the expectation would be that you should be able to bring effort/urgency for much of the game. Understand you may have a small dip, but be able to push back. And that's Julian's decision. If he's not seeing it from the guys that they are addressing, and he knows that he has guys in the minors who showed this during the preseason, then that may be part of the reason D'Astous is up. D'Astous plays with jam. He does. I mean, I saw him more in the Nashville home game in the preseason than that at Florida game, but he had to play a lot in that at Florida game.
He did.
Because the Lightning were down to 8 skaters.
Yep.
And he wasn't shy about being in that game. That game was not for the faint of heart. Charle-Édouard D'Astous had no vote last year, or he had no allegiance last year to either one of these teams. So he gets signed by the Lightning, and he's dropped into this rivalry, and he's like, yeah, it's on. We saw that from a number of the guys that were in that game for the Lightning.
Agreed.
That's why we kind of thought that maybe those two games would help bring the Lightning as a team closer together, and it may.
And I wholeheartedly believe this with any championship-like team. The increase in your team's play that are significant, the gains that are made, I think oftentimes comes from your third and fourth lines. Most teams have their top line set. Would you agree, partner? And most teams, even if they're not relatively deep, can probably field 2 decent lines who can score. Even the teams who are struggling a little bit, it may be a struggle to get 5 or 6 forwards who can play at a high level, but I think most are there. What separates you and where you make the biggest gains year in and year out are what are your third and fourth lines. And the years, again, we keep going back to this. I don't want to make it such a simple point because there are other factors, but it does stand out for obvious reasons. The years the Lightning have made tremendous gains in the playoffs is because oftentimes that third and fourth line could change the game in a way. It was a goal. I mean, the third line, the Goodrow, Coleman, and Gord line is going to go down as it almost has its own mystique. Mm-hmm. They're not going to have their own statue, but you know what I mean. Like people are they reference that line all the time.
They often tip the balance.
Yes.
To the Lightning side because
100%.
They could do things that the other team's third line couldn't do. Or they matched up against a top 6 line, one of the top 2 lines on the other team, and neutralized that line, which gave one of the Lightning's top 2 lines a big advantage with whatever matchup they were getting.
And they could push back to the point they could score as well, which is valuable. And all I'm saying is, the good news is I think collectively the Lightning have those players. They just need to find out the right combinations. Mm-hmm. I do think they have that.
And they have some guys who need to get going, whether it's confidence, a little
Yes.
bit of a slump, things not happening. Like, you have to believe it's going to click in.
Yes. And
Braden
look,
Point, like, he's gotten his point. What does he have, 5 points this year? I
Yeah.
mean, so he's chipped in some points, but we've seen him dictate play far more frequently than he
100%.
has. Same with Hagel.
same with Cooch.
Same with Sorelli, I think.
I mean, those guys aren't clicking yet. But, is Dominic James somebody that ends up coming up at some point, and could he play on a fourth line with what we saw him do and say, he's just not a guy that's going to go up and down.
Right.
He might be able to do something in that space. So part of the frustration for Lightning fans is that you want to throw all these guys up there and say, okay, he's immediately going to do this. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't always work
It
that
doesn't
way,
work
yeah.
that way. Like, you're going to have to find, and it may not happen until midseason where you finally find the right fourth line combinations or the third line combinations. The good news is I think the personnel is there. I think they just have to find the mix.
And I will add, Greg, it is a very good sign that these guys that we talked about during preseason who went down are having an immediate impact at the AHL level. So that, to me, shows the sustainability to kind of how they are playing. I know it's early days in the AHL, but 4-0 is 3 road wins, 2 in Hershey, which Hershey may not be quite the same team that it was when, they won back-to-back Calder Cups recently, but still not an easy building to go into and play in and win. And they rallied from deficits in those games, did Syracuse. So I think organizationally, we should feel good about where things are with the guys who are right on the cusp, right? Who are right now kind of sort of tweeners, but maybe some of the tweeners are not going to end up being tweeners. How Julian figures all of this out is a different matter. Like, he kind of took, he had a card to play to free up a roster spot, and I think there was more to it than just, I want to free up a roster spot. But he had the waiver exempt option for Geekie, so that was no problem. He may be far more hesitant to try and send down to Jack Finley, who may get claimed. And I know the fans have been, at least some of them to us, have been complaining about Lilleberg. Lilleberg would have to clear waivers. Are the Lightning willing to risk that to lose this young defenseman? That would be a hard decision. And you can't just keep adding players, right? Like, you have to make it fit within the cap. You can't go over 23. So look, you may have a lot of guys that you're interested in bringing up from Syracuse. You have to create room for them. How do you do that? Well, one way you do it is send down the guy who is waiver exempt. After this, it gets a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
And you have guys coming off the injured list.
Yeah, Nick Paul is going to be here, and we keep talking about
and
what's this team gonna
Gergenson's
look like. Yeah,
we'll see if Gergenson's is able to come back as soon as Thursday. That's going to fill another roster spot.
Things are going to be changing.
Yeah,
and they have options. We'll talk more about it tomorrow for sure. But tomorrow we are going to go live, and
yes,
we'll see if there's anything transpiring there. Thanks to Dave Randorf and his Blue Jays team for hopping on earlier. Good luck to him. And our audience who participated, we always appreciate you guys. Partner, we'll do it again tomorrow, and maybe have a guest lined up too. Maybe a national guy. We got to get a national guy. See if anybody of those likes to come on.
Or gal.
Or gal. That's right.
Yes.
Or gal. Yeah, we don't care. As long as you can talk hockey, we're okay with that. Thanks to Steve Ersnick as well and Jared Johnston. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.